What we want to see is how we can now take it to scale. Can I please request the stage be cleared? Can you be respectful to the next panelist? May I request to be respectful to the next panelist, please, and leave the room? So, without further ado, we are a few minutes late, and given the amount of the scale that we have here, I think we are not bad. So, we'll try to catch up with the discussions, and we'll get there. But let me start off without further ado. I'm going to do the less of the talking. Just by way of introduction, I'm Samir Pujari. I lead the work on AI in the WHO's headquarters in Geneva, and I'm here today to discuss. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. So may I, in the meantime, can I request all the panelists to please come on board and take your chairs here? So we have. I can see the order here now. But please come and take your chairs.
First is Samit and Divleen.
Yeah. Ulrike, please. We have Anders, Shailendra, Soumya, Divleen, and Dr. Mona. I'll introduce you as we go along. I think we need to take a picture first, I've been told.
Yeah.
So we'll stand first and take a picture before we do the other formalities, and then we can go to the actual discussions.
मेरे दोनों चल रहा है क्या बोल रही थी
Thank you. All right, I think we can get started now.
Otherwise, we have a funny gap. Yes, I know.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks for coming here. We'll dip into the. I've been told that the CEO for National Health Authority, Mr. Banwal, is running late, so we'll just go ahead with the panel discussion, which is we already have all the panelists sitting here, and we have a very elite panel, and I'm very humbled and pleased to welcome all of you here. Some coming from far away from Geneva. A few of you from here, some from UK and other places. So thank you so much. I have a pleasure of first introducing the panelists here. I have Dr. Mona Dugal as the first one, a long-time collaborator. She's the director of a very long name center, but at ICMR, and she's the focal point on AI and digital health at ICMR. One of our co-chairs also on the evaluations front. So thank you. Please welcome Dr. Mona Dugal to the panel. Then we have from the Wellcome Trust, Ms. Emily Muller. Emily is a technology manager at the Wellcome Trust, and she supports AI health research and innovation in Africa with the Data for Science and Health team. She also holds a PhD in computer vision, which is one of the big areas. So as a technical expert also on this space, and the Urban Health from Imperial College in London, and has served as chair of deep learning in the bar in 2024. Thank you, Emily, for coming in all the way, making the way from UK here. Please welcome Emily. Thank you. I think the reason I'm introducing properly, because often we see these panels, we just come, sit, listen to people, have the same thoughts, and people leave. But I think it's also about these conferences about knowing who's doing what, so that after that session, you can actually build partnerships. And I think that's what I'm hoping we can go forward from here. That's why I'm taking a bit of depth of who these people are and how much strength they're coming in. And these are not just people asked to come and sit on a panel, but someone who have been working in this space quite intently and deeply and can share and replicate the knowledge going forward. So that's why I think please do welcome these people. Then I have Soumya, who I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time. And again, I'm not going by any order here, I'm just going by my list here. Soumya is a member of the Applied AI Research team at Anthropic, which is in the news a lot, of course. And I'm glad that we have the industry partners also on the floor here. Working at the intersection of customers and research, he has published research on AI for mental health, including suicide ideation, detection on social media, and suicide risk assessments, and has contributed to digital mental health technologies through work with WISA. He previously served as the head of model quality at OpenPipe and holds a master's in AI innovation from Carnegie Mellon. Thank you, Soumya, for making it all the way here. Next, from Anthropic to Google on the other side, a big firm again, Devleen, who's the India lead for Google Health specifically. Devleen joins with over 6 years at Google and extensive experience in digital healthcare, spanning product design, go-to-market strategy, and scale-up. Very important point that we need to discuss and explore today. And she served as the head of product at Telenor Health in Bangladesh and holds an MBA from Symbiosis and a healthcare management qualification from IIM Ahmedabad. Please welcome Devleen from Google. Thank you. Next, I have my dear friend, Andres Rice, who is the co-lead from WHO headquarters in Geneva of Health Ethics and Governance Unit, WHO. Andres has worked with us for a long time in one of our publications on the ethics of AI, which has been one of the most downloaded guidance from WHO and checklists for research. Has been a big pleasure. Andres is a public health expert with a focus on ethical aspects of infectious diseases, public health surveillance, and big data and AI. He's, of course, a medical doctor as well. Andres, thank you so much for coming. From very close in Geneva again, our dear partners, we have Ms. Ulrike Thiel, the Director of AI Policy at the World Intellectual Property Organization. For those of you who know, this is a specialized agency of the UN dealing on IP, copyrights, patents, and one of the richest ones, if I may say so also. But thank you, Ulrike. She's the Director of AI Policy at the World Intellectual Property Organization, covering innovation policies for AI and frontier technologies. She's an experienced IP lawyer with a PhD in chemistry, an MBA from Oxford, and broad industry experience spanning pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and IT. So now you know why she's on the panel. So thank you. Please invite her as well. And last but not least, Sharendra. We go long back again. We met before in the past. But Sharendra is a physician and public health specialist with an MBA from the University of Geneva, actually. He currently serves as a senior program officer at the Gates Foundation based in Delhi, anchoring health and nutrition policy work, supporting family health, infectious diseases, and digital health and AI portfolios. He comes with over 19 years of experience in program management, building partnerships, and engaging with governments across healthcare delivery in India. Please welcome Sharendra as well to the panel. So the panel here today represents the whole ecosystem of AI as we're looking at it. We have the medical research side of it, we have the industry scale, we have the investors who are making it actually happen on the ground, and we all are here as users. So we need to discuss that and see how we can actually bring together that AI talk. 300,000 people that are coming here, is AI just a myth or is it actually happening? And we saw in the morning when Catherine, our OIC in the regional office, launched the compendium of AI, that a lot of this AI for health is actually happening on the ground. How can we structure it? How can we synthesize it to make sure that this benefits us as a current generation, our healthcare providers, a lot of it, who are providing these healthcare services, and the future generations, as well as us right now today, the day we are living it. Can we benefit from this AI? So that's what the discussion is going to focus on. Thank you so much again for everyone coming here. And we have, of course, some questions and rounds. So please, I would request you to please talk to your wisdom, because you're here as experts in the topic area. And let me start first in a question with Ulrike. I mean, sorry to put you on the spot, but as an implementer, a lot of the industry people come to me and ask me the question, we are innovating, but what in the AI space, how does the IP function, right? Now, this is a big question for a lot of players. We're creating, does it set out, where does the IP, what practical mechanisms are there for IP? And often the story has been that people have avoided this question. Oh no, we are against IP has been a common sentiment that I've heard, and Ulrike, you'll say that, right? Because it restricts innovation. But I think that's a myth. Ulrike, we've had discussions, plus what can you tell us about what WIPO and international community have been doing around this IP space and how it can help take the scale to the next level?
Thank you so much for the starter question. Can you hear me? Okay,
yes.
Very, very good. So I'm your warm-up act, and I'm really grateful for the question because, as you said, very often it is pitched as IP versus access, and the main message that I have, it's about development and deployment. So really, and I like this panel so much because it's an ecosystem approach. There are many cogs that turn in order to adjust the ecosystem, to give the access, but also to develop the AI for health application across the entire ecosystem that we need. So it's development and deployment, and IP in my world, in the wiper world, is one of the cogs that you can use to help fine-tune that ecosystem. Because IP systems at their best, when they're tuned the best way, are a powerful incentive and economic tool. What does that mean? I'm an IP nerd, and I can talk until my other panelists will take the microphone away from me. But really, when we think about innovation, the very first thing that probably comes to mind from an IP side is patents. And patents are a powerful incentive to invest in the development of these technologies. They're also a powerful investment in providing legal certainty that attracts the investment and that then also allows licensing and rolling out of the technologies. The other thing that some people might not be aware is patents are a deal. Patents require you to disclose an invention. You get a patent for it, but it then becomes part of the public domain. So public actually have an incredible function of making sure that the knowledge is open and disseminated. Super important in the AI space, because what we see more and more, if it's difficult to patent things, companies will keep data sets, for example, as a trade secret, and that really stops the rollout of things. The other thing from an IP side that maybe doesn't get talked as much about, but should get talked about, is copyright, because innovations in copyright is not necessarily something that people associate, but when you think of training data sets, when you think of code and everything that AI can do in the models that we're doing, there is a lot of copyright in it, and again, that provides a powerful incentive in that ecosystem. So my pitch would be very much to say that IP is a powerful tool, but of course it needs to be calibrated, and it needs to be calibrated by access. And I'm really looking forward to discussion, how you turn the IP cog a little bit together with the other cogs so we make access possible. I'll stop at that point.
That's very well said. And the reason I started with this foundational question is this is something people don't want to touch often. And I've always heard industry partners, developers saying, oh, IP, if we want to put in, we're going to get stolen, we don't have any access, we can't get income out of it. So I think the clear message Ulrike said, this is an enabler. It's to protect and facilitate and enable. And there are mechanisms, ecosystems, tools to help sort of sort out those things. Thank you so much, Ulrike, for those comments. And we'll come to you in the second round. But moving from the IP to ethics, there's another big gap. I mean, of course, in the research space, we see a lot of ethics. When you go into the actual implementation, the actual development, ethics is just a word, right? I mean, often. What are the major gaps? I mean, you guys have worked a lot, and there have been products that we've developed. So what can you highlight the need for ethics, and what are the major gaps that need to be addressed to this conference so that if people go back from here, they need to understand that ethics has to be the core of it?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Can you hear me? So for the World Health Organization, ethics and governance aspects of AI have always been front and center. And already in 2019, WHO established a dedicated international expert group on ethics and governance of AI. And despite COVID coming in the way, in 2021 already, WHO published its first guidance on ethics and governance aspects of AI for health, which also included the first 6 international ethical principles on ethics and AI. And in 2024, we then followed with guidance on LLMs. And this was, as Samir was saying, one of the most downloaded documents at WHO. It has found a very big use in countries and among the industry. What Samir said, the problem is we do have the ethical principles. So, since a few years, and many other organizations have also come up with similar principles. So there is an international consensus, I would say, by and large, on these principles. The problem is really how to translate these principles into practice in AI in healthcare. And there are several factors. I cannot speak to all of them. One, of course, is a very important one, is the national regulation and legislation. So ethical principles have to be translated into national laws and regulations. But what is really important as well is that AI includes ethics from the start. So that ethics is not an afterthought, but that the AI algorithms actually are programmed already with having ethical aspects in mind. And so this is a concept called ethics by design. And this is why we have been working with programmers and designers to teach them about the ethical principles and how to incorporate them into the programming already. And about a year ago, WHO issued a international online training course for designers and AI programmers specifically on how to do this, how to integrate ethics from the start. And I think this is really key. And of course, we will have to work even more with our industry colleagues on this issue. But I will leave it there in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andreas, and thanks for talking about the ethics by design principles. Because often, the challenge to scale is you are creating a product. Maybe it is a problem-centric product, but if it's not addressing the ethical issues, the six functions or the six parameters that Andreas mentioned, you're already risking a scale of that solution. So I think it's very important to look at that ethics by design to make sure that checklist is properly adhered to. And as Hans and Andreas were telling us that we have trainings already set out by WHO for these developers. So that's very encouraging to take at that. Let me switch from here. As Andreas mentioned, we have to work with the industry. Soumya, you're a researcher, you've studied very much, and you're working on the very, very latest trends of things, probably more into it through Anthropic. As AI models are increasingly adopted and tailored for specific health situations, right? What are the key considerations from an industry perspective to see scale, and what are the risks? Because I think everyone intrinsically is still scared of how health and AI are going to engage and interact, right? We've seen the recent saga around the mall books and those things, but how does the health space and AI space actually converge from an industry perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question, Samir. So I think, first of all, I would want to double click on what Andreas said already. I think for industry, when applying AI to health, it is the ethics by design or safety by design and not as something bolted on is extremely critical. I think this is quite popularly known, but in Anthropic, we have this framework called constitutional AI, where we essentially, as part of training the model, before it ever sees the light of day, is guided. The training is guided severely by this constitution, which focuses on ethical principles and as Andreas mentioned, and yeah, that's really something would be amazing to collaborate on with folks who have a broader stakeholder view. Secondly, I think the place where industry and AI and healthcare kind of converge is also just understanding that, and the considerations that go into play is understanding that there are a lot of kind of, so to say, lower hanging fruit use cases, and kind of clerical and administrative tasks where AI can be a massive force multiplier, and let kind of experts in the field do what they do best, while leaving more of the grunt work to be done by AI. So I think that those are I think some of the key considerations. Besides that, one major thing that industry is always looking for is great benchmarks and evaluations that can help guide how the next models or the next iterations of these things are formed. As you guys are domain experts there. So, yeah.
Thanks, Soumya. That's brilliant. Again, the benchmarking evaluation components that you mentioned. And yes, I agree. When we talk of AI, it's not replacing the entire health systems. It's about helping, enabling. And I think this has been said often, but again, this keeps on coming in everything. So the solutions have to be focused on where those process problems or administrative problems can help actually address the major gaps that we're seeing. We don't have providers who can sort of provide some services. So in that, so evaluation is the other thing that you mentioned, Swami. It's important for the industry to see these evaluation programs. So I'm pointing towards Dr. Mona in a double role as I mean, she's also with the ICMR, but also working on the global committee of evaluations. Dr. Mona, can you talk about the work that's been planned in the evaluations work stream, how it will help these different stakeholders, and why it's important for a global institution to do it and everyone to be invested in this space so extremely? Because we've seen in the digital health space, in the e-health space, a lot of verticalization, a lot of pilotization, as was mentioned again and again. How do we enable that through evaluation? I mean, what are the areas of evaluation that you're looking at?
Thanks, Amir, for taking this question. I think two things that we really need to understand. I think there's a lot of movement happening across the world. And I think there needs to be a lot of cross-learning. So even when I'm talking within India, we already know there are states down south who are actually ahead of the curve. And I was a part of the committee in Andhra, where they're working on taking some of the medtech companies, and now they are in the process of starting the evaluation. So already a lot of health systems are taking into this place. But if we go up across other parts of India, within India, there's a lot of variability that we are seeing. As a research organization, I think the compendium was a good starting point, where they actually made an effort to bring a lot of those case studies together, what was the real world action happening. So we have the evidence as we are talking. So we have evidence from the north, we have evidence from the south, and we have evidence across the globe. But we have not been able to collate it. Because even if we talk about evaluations in the space of RCTs, so RCTs are an evolving thing, but when we are we really do not have the time for RCTs. We really need to have trials that are pragmatic. And what are the kind of trials we need? So we need to have the AI test beds and trial units that are now going to actually be giving a quick answer. So if you screen that first part, then you might be able to take those things, give a feedback to the companies or other people, even within the health systems that they're working. How do you strengthen it? Then go to the next part and use technology. You have the area of digital twins that is coming up very rapidly in the RCTs. So taking the newer concepts, how do you evaluate this and take it forward? So as the chair, when we are taking up this, we want to look at what are the best practices across the globe. How do we operationalize it, and how do we engage with the governments and be the technical partners? So I think I see a lot of this interaction that is now required. We are already working across the globe. I think we are part of the Responsible AI network also. So giving these networks, we are able to build the cross networks. I think UN has a network, the AI has a network, and the WHO. So this is a time when the global agencies need to get together, and they have the right space because they can pull in a lot of those big partnerships together. So that is what is required, so that we can go from pilot to scale, get the best practices in, have the AI test bed, clinical trial units, have the centers of excellence. If they are built across, this will help us kind of engage rapidly with the governments, scale it up, and make sure that whatever we are talking right now, ensuring that the ethical and the responsible and the trusted, all the buzzwords that we talk about, they are put into practice. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. We will always be in those silos. So that is that builds into the system. So that is my take on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Mona. I mean, that's actually very nicely put together. I mean, we've discussed the guidance is out there, the principles are out there. Then we need to have the collaborations, as you're mentioning, to make that evaluation possible, because that will facilitate that. And not just collaborations in terms of having centers, but these centers of excellence who can benchmark or evaluate these products themselves. And it's not one person do all kind of job. But I think so that's setting up the stage where we have to do this. Obviously, this all needs investments. And that's why I can now come to the Wellcome Trust and the Gates Foundation to discuss. I mean, I know Wellcome Trust has been doing a lot of planning around the space of work, around the evaluations ecosystem. And you guys are also technically very involved in this work. So from Wellcome Trust perspective, in terms of AI and research, how are you looking at the evaluation components and building that ecosystem, learning from the past of e-health, digital health systems where we have had fragmentation, which has failed to succeed. So Emily, let me ask you first. I mean, how is Wellcome strategizing this evaluation to scale approach going forward?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think we are focused on the rigor of the evaluation, as well as Mona's highlighted, the ecosystem and the network. So in order to see that public health value being delivered, we need safe and scaled adoption. And to de-risk those investments, we need evaluations that go beyond just the technical validity, but look across multiple dimensions. So what is the intended clinical use, and is it effective? How cost effective is it? How does it integrate into the existing health system infrastructure and governance? How crucially, especially, how does it affect health outcomes? And bringing in the lens of equity, is that the same across different population subgroups? Once it's deployed, is the model stationary over time? Does it drift? And how is it changing clinical behaviors in practice? And is the efficacy still the same after some time? AI developers might not always be in the best position to evaluate all of these things, whether it's because of resource constraints, as Mona's highlighted, for time, or clinical expertise or evaluation expertise. So one of the roles that we see as funders is, let's bring together those relevant expertise, let's support that broad evaluation agenda that can lead to scaled adoption, and bringing in not only individual evaluations, but what happens when we start to develop methods that others can use. So, as Mona was saying, bringing in networks to share within country, across country, and enhance and accelerate that learning.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, I think, this is something that we've seen has failed in the past, or been challenged, I think, in the digital health space, because there was a lot of verticals kept on reinvesting in the same space. I know Rwanda, we had a case study where they had 300 pilots running on the same time, on the same topic, right? And that's, I think it's the reinvestment that needs to be thought through. But, and you guys are working closely with, I think one of the efforts I've seen is the investors are working together a lot now in this space, and the donors also. Shailendra, over to you. Just trying to think on that same honing in. You've got, from the Gates Foundation, a lot of investments in AI. Yes, of course, I think it's important. One of the things I keep on hearing is people do pilots and pilotitis. I think it's important, because without that, you cannot have innovation. But does it stop there? How we go from there to scale? Has that effort been enough, and how is Gates Foundation now looking at, because we've been hearing through all the announcements from Mr. Bill Gates around how he wants to scale the AI impact. So what is the Gates Foundation thinking on the same lines of how can these principles be embedded into the actual scale-up planning of implementation of these AI systems?
Thanks, Samir. This is working.
Yeah.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you for having me here. I think we're all seeing the rapidity of the evolution and revolution of AI. Truly and well, here is the AI era. And I think health is going to be affected very significantly by AI, as we are already seeing. So you rightly said that many of these pilots don't go beyond pilots, they remain projects. So few criteria that we have been applying based on our experiences. Firstly, are these pilots operationally real? I think that's very critical. Is this working in a PHC? Is it working in the hands of an ASHA worker? Is it really making difference to the life of a patient? I think so. Having those specific components are very important. So one of the examples that come to my mind is when doctors are actually practicing, treating patients. It was always been told that, they don't write enough, or there's a data entry operator who's required to enter the data. So now having this whole voice scribe feature and making it work in an enormously crowded place, loud environment, I think is making it very real. And I think such kinds of AI tools and solutions are critical for our work. So having something which is real is important. Having something which has a foundational infrastructure, architecture, which a lot of our government interventions are currently working on, making a difference there. So ABDM, for example, having these entire infrastructure built to share data, to share these components, and having your AI solution aligned to that, I think is very, very critical. A third important feature, and there are quite a few of these principles that we are looking at, but the third one is on governance, right? So how do we really create a mechanism for governance? I think one of the aspects that I think Dr. Mona mentioned as well is the ICMR guidelines on ethical usage of AI, the governance principle, but also the same principle needs to extend to procurement of these AI tools by the governments. And that's very critical, because many times what we've seen is that the government budget line items may not have this particular line item, because it's not prepared that way. But now what we are seeing, more and more states are gearing up for that. So governance and having that forethought to include that as a part of the line item is very, very critical. I think another important feature that we've been really trying to understand is, how does this work in a system, right? All of these cannot work, all of these solutions cannot work in isolation. And so the health system, is the health system geared up to be able to accept and use AI? Do we have enough training modules developed? Do we have doctors and frontline workers who are not just going to be trained, but also behaviorally, charged up to be able to use these tools to make their life simpler? I think these are some of the core principles that we are looking at, Samir. And then the last one, which I feel is probably the most important, is, are patients ready and sort of are they trusting AI enough, right? And I think that has really made a difference, because now we see a larger number of people, trusting AI, trusting themselves in the hands of AI. I think these principles are the ones that are helping us look at our investments and making those decisions to support the right kind of solutions. And they themselves will help us scale as well. So having clinical validations to help these pilots to grow to scale while aligning to all of these principles, I think is probably where we'll find the midpoint.
Thank you so much, Harish. It was so crisply put by you. I mean, the two areas, governance. And it's very nice to hear from an investment perspective that governance is now the core. Because we have realized this. We have often just knee-jerk reactions. This is good, shiny object, let's use it, try to scale it up. It doesn't work. I mean, we've seen, I think governance, the foundation has to be there. Very important. And the second thing you said very nicely was trust. The patients themselves will scale it out. We don't have to push around it. So that job of ours is to build that trust as a community of AI. I think with that intention, I think that's very critical, because we don't talk often about regulations and the work around regulations and how do we build that trust, right? Like IP is regulation, a compounding factor. This thing. Let me go to Devleen. I mean, Devleen, you have been implementing. Sorry, I've been putting people on the spot here and there. I mean, as a company, and this is, the regulations is probably the hatred word in the companies often, right? It says, alongside IP. Regulations, why do we want that? We are responsible, we can do it. How does Google Health, I mean, what are the challenges that you've seen in terms of regulations? And again, I'm not saying it's good or bad, right? It has to be the right level, which is like a right marriage. You can never get it right? But how do you get that right intent from Google's perspective so that we don't stop and hinder the implementation of opportunities that are there, but at the same time don't damage it? And you've been on the ground, you've been working in India for a long time. I mean, it's a continent itself. And how do you see these challenges or the opportunities there from regulations perspective?
Thank you for that question, Samir. So I'd like to first point out that AI regulations it's an evolving area. Each country, or for that matter, group of countries, looks at these regulations in a very different manner. The EU has its own set of regulations. The UK has its own set of regulations. The US is looking at it differently. India now also has a set of regulations. For an organization like Google, and I'll probably refer more to India, the regulatory landscape is something that we've kept abreast of very in an observatory manner. We observe it very closely. We try and comply as much as we can. And we try and work with the policymakers very, very closely as well. But I think one of our biggest challenges has been trying to adapt our models for the Indian data, which fortunately or unfortunately exists, but it is not as usable as we would like for it to be. So one of the things which I think all of us here would love to see is that we keep talking about digital infrastructure. We're talking about digital infrastructure which is for the public benefit. And under that, we look at AI models. But I think one very big piece that we should be looking at is how do we get data sets which are very much India focused, very India centric, and are available for use to train AI models for global organizations. So that's my first point. And the second bit, which I think is something that today we definitely need, is to create awareness on a massive scale. So referring to ABDM, referring to the entire interoperability data standards that we've all been talking about, the question to ask is, does the Indian citizen actually understand what interoperability is? Does the consumer today know what they're consenting to? Because I am pretty certain probably 5 out of 100 Indians would actually understand what exactly they're consenting to. So where I'm going with this one is that if consumers are made to understand that their data is safe, it is going to be anonymized, it is going to be used for training AI models, the access that today we don't have to that organized data might just become better. And eventually, I know we're all moving towards AI models which are more localized in nature. Maybe that becomes a reality much sooner than anyone else can anticipate. And I think the one other bit which would be very, very good to look at and does not exist today is that when policymakers are looking at regulations, are looking at guidelines, the end-to-end ecosystem should be taken into account. So we should look at public health, we should look at private health players, we should look at the consumer, we should look at how we are looking at it from a health budget perspective as well, which I think today that zoomed out perspective seems to be missing.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. So you said a very good point. Thank you again for those critical points. But you mentioned data sets, and this is, I think, I've not been to a session on AI since 2017 where data sets have not been discussed. Anyone says we need to have access to data sets, right? They should be made available. My question, I'm going to put it back to you, Evelyn. I mean, coming from Google, how? And what needs to be done? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. And this is, I want the panelists, this is the now terror round where we go random on the questions, because I think we want to hear from people sitting here. I want to sit as an audience and understand, yes, all this has been said. How? How do we make that happen? If I'm a startup developer, if I'm a policymaker, if I'm Google, how do I make it happen?
So I think the lowest hanging fruit, Samir, and I might be, the odd person in the room who says this, today global data sets exist across other geos. We don't necessarily need to start from scratch. We can have an expert committee look at those data sets and say, okay, this makes sense for X condition. So a lot of biobanks today have enough and more data to train models. But no one today has actually had the good sense to say that of, let's say, 100 million data points, probably half of it makes sense for India as well. Or why just India? It could be for the global south, really. So I think that is a very simple and easy enough exercise to get the ball rolling. Secondly, there are no data mandates as such which exist. So Apollo has millions of data points, so does, let's say, Manipal, but then so does an AIMS. Interoperability is a great concept, but then how does all of it come together? There has to be, I feel, a policy level rollout of how we want to look at medical records and medical data. In principle, it exists, but in terms of actual deployment, we seem to still be taking baby steps. Yes, the ABDM has an infrastructure in place, but I think this requires central level mandates which have to be implemented with a very, very solid repercussion of what happens if you don't comply. I know we keep talking about, I think, 100 years of independence and things like that, and how we want to completely upgrade our health system. Is it possible? 100%. But I think the pace just needs to be scaled up a little bit.
Thanks, Jivleen. I know, I mean, you're definitely saying that there is a need for governance, which I think Shailendra mentioned also. I still want to keep on going to you. One quick question. Google, are they internal thinking around? If we want to speak, and as I said, we want to try and find solutions. Are there thinking as a leader to sort of make some kind of these data sets available for the research globally? Are there discussions, or are you using these mechanisms because you are conveners? Are you able to convene and do these things as well? And I'll then go to you. I promise this is the last question for you.
So, Samir, what we try and do is we influence without power. I'll explain that a little bit. So we try and ensure that we have the right relationships with the right set of policymakers. We try and influence in circles where we know that we might end up having a voice. But to be very honest, it is something which is a learning curve for us also. If I were today, it's been a few years where we have the right set of relationships. We are welcomed by policymakers, folks within the government. But it has been an upward and a not so steep curve also.
Yes.
Sorry, I'll just conclude. I think Google today has a lot of resources, yes, and we are more than willing to work with government partners, government agencies. We would love for them to also want to work with us.
Okay. Thanks, Jimmy. I'll take a yes from Google's side that you're very willing to work in this thing, but I understand the concept of governance. Shailendra and Emily, coming to you now, right? The investments in the government, you mentioned about governance, and this has always been the orphan baby in the space, right? Because if we want to scale up things, we don't see that space. What areas, is it just talking about governance at broad level, or are there specific actions that Gates Foundation and Wellcome Trust together are looking at? And governance here sitting, I'm a developer, I'm an implementer, I'm a healthcare workforce person. How does that sort of help me, the governance issues and how is Gates facilitating that or Wellcome Trust facilitating that?
Sure. Thanks, Samir. I think two dimensions to it. One, internally, I think what we are trying to do is put together a team that is specifically looking at all kinds of regulations, governance guidelines that are coming together from different sources, and trying to figure out what is it that makes most sense to the region, the country that we are operating in. So in India, if it's the ICMR, if it's the ICMR digital health team that is looking at it. So our role has been to support the institution there to be able to make sense of it, right? Our role has always been facilitation, and that's what we are also looking at, right? So that's one dimension, right, which is to look at different guidelines, different resources, different kinds of regulations come together. And the second one, and probably that is for all the developers and organizations that are working on this, is also to align, to help or let them know that they need to align with all of these in order for us to even start working with them. And working with them also means that we will try and help alignment as well. It's not that we just leave them alone. So these are the two ways in which we are trying to support AI solutions. And I think these have been pretty much similar principles that were there even before, even from a digital health perspective. And now that has kind of graduated into the artificial intelligence space as well.
Thank you, Sharma.
But over to you.
Yeah, definitely to echo a similar sentiment, working with experts in country. So we work closely with APHRC, who are in the audience, and to really contextualize what those interventions mean in country, and developed a shared learning agenda across the continent, feeding into regulatory networks which are relevant for East Africa, which are relevant for the continent, and really leaning into the expertise of institutions, and also supporting the institutional capacity on the ground.
And Emily, and Sharon, again, just a cross question. On the globalization, you both mentioned about learnings and cross-pollination of these knowledge is very important.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Through networks, because you fund so many research grants, you fund innovations, and then to some extent you also try to get them to scale, because that's the whole purpose of these things. So cross-pollination, how are you guys doing that? How can people do that actually?
Actually, two examples. One, what I'm currently actually anchoring is supporting the government of AP. What we're trying to do there is we've helped the government set up a high-level expert advisory group. And this group comprises of experts from different parts of the world. And within that, there are experts who bring in these specific AI and digital related expertise to the state of AP. Now, the government of AP now can essentially leverage these experts and their networks to be able to bring these AI solutions to their state. And in fact, even better is that government of AP themselves have invested heavily in different AI tools. And so it becomes a little more easier for them to be able to make these connections. So that's one example that I think is something that addresses this. The second one is to do with when we are looking at not just experts, but also, I think I just missed that point specifically.
Okay. But the first part is good. I mean, the example of Emily?
Maybe just to speak a bit to the developer community, as a funder and with our partners, thinking around supporting a cohort of scientists and how we can actually also create wraparound support for that cohort to learn together with an institutional partner. And also, you know, with my hat with the deep learning endowment on, also thinking around like grassroots communities that support communities of practice that annually convene, get together and share ideas on how to move forward from the developer level.
Thanks. I mean, that's great. Because Shailendra mentioned about the government ecosystem that you're building up. That's very important because the governance comes from the government side to a lot of extent. And that's what facilitated what Devleen said is there has to be the engagement from both sides to make it happen. And then, as you mentioned, to the developers community as well, excuse me, to help and build the ecosystem whole rounded up in the space. Dr. Mona, going to you. I mean, at the center of these things, right? I mean, investments and everything. What is the ask? I mean, are we going in the right direction? Because you are actually seeing the research being converted, evaluations to evaluations and evaluations to actual, hopefully scale. I mean, in a big way. We haven't seen that landscape of scale in the implementation. We are close. I mean, vision is, of course, getting much there. Where do you see, I mean, if we want to come to the next summit somewhere and have this panel again, what do you want to see changed from that? I mean, we said that we have had discussion. And where are those gaps in that one?
I think, Samir, as we are talking, I think a lot of change is already happening. And I think when I started 2017 and when I look, things that we had said then, they are starting to happen now. If I had talked about data sets in 2017, nobody would have asked. But the concept was actually made at that point. I still remember in 2021, the final recommendations went in and the talk had started. But now it is at the point where there is an ask. Once the industry starts happening, then things also start happening. Second, around the evaluation. ICMR has called, you have national health research priorities, right? A lot of those calls have been gone out. So we already have an ecosystem where across India, so those we have centers which have been identified which are doing research in particular areas. So we have that ecosystem and that can be leveraged. So identifying places where research is already being developed. And a lot of these things, it's not the usual partners. A lot of new partners have emerged. So those things we have to start leveraging now. The second is like once you have and third is now at the Digital Health Institute, we are now talking to the states itself. So one of the areas we are like, they are coming to us and we are actually advising them like, can we have the computational health units? Something like that around where you actually train who are able to do both the things. And this comes from my own experience that I worked very closely where I was in the research institution. There was an advocacy partner that worked with the states. And we had technical partners like the international technical partners. And this is not even from the AI, this was a fortification study that I had done. So it was a very well done small project which happened at a very state level, but it took to the national level. Same for the national that we did the screening, like we did the evaluation for the diabetic retinopathy. Again, we had Niti Aayog. We have to have the right partners at every stage. If we are able to pull the right partners, right partnerships, even a small, well-done project will take it to scale. But that's why I said we already have the national health research priorities that are already there. We have, within that, we can identify places which are doing very good research, take them from there. And I think, as Devleen also mentioned, how do we support these places? Because data is the last part. When we talk like in a medical field, like for me, data is very flat. It is like it's an Excel sheet. I'll pay 30,000 to a data entry operator, and that is how I'm going to collect data. But the concept of data is just not there. So you have to build that data concepts right there. You have to institutionalize research. I'm going to the IITs. They are thinking we can open medical schools, but medicine is an art. You cannot just have a medical school in an IIT and think that the patient is a data point. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to have a coexistence, co-collaboration, where you have to start across. When I talk to the lawyers, I think Kanika is there. It was very funny. I think just before we came in, we were talking to somebody. They said, "I've come to the tech field, but law is very confusing." Health is exactly like the same thing, but I think that doesn't mean we leave that. We have to integrate it so that everybody moves together and we are able to build those things.
Thank you. Going from the lawyer's point of view, Ulrike. I know we started a bit late, so we can, I think, stretch a couple of minutes over. People sitting here as an audience, we said IP is easy and convenient. Give me 2 messages for them. What do you need to do as an implementer developer to get the IP scale away from them and actually sort of integrate and involve that into it?
I'll start by saying this. My first answer to the first question was my pitch to you to say IP isn't like the 13th fairy at Sleeping Beauty. So IP has a role to play to be at the table, but that's very high level stuff. I used to work in law firms. I used to work in industry. And I'm looking around the room and I'm sure we have people here that work in research. We have people here that work for companies. We have people here that work for startups. And my guess would be if I mention IP, half of you will run for the hills and say, I'm a startup. I don't have time for this right now. I need my investment elsewhere. And the other half that have like bigger companies will say, oh, these people over there, the lawyers, I'll hand it over to them. So my practical advice is, in the AI and IP space is difficult, is to engage as early as possible with it to see the potential. What we're doing at SWIPO is we're actually actively working with practical things because a lot of the discussion about AI and IP can be at a really high level where people disengage. We're trying very hard to be closer, to be practical, to have tools, to have guidelines, to work with innovators on the ground that have these difficult questions. The other thing is an IP is only as good as the IP you get out of it. And the same question we're struggling with, governments, IP officers, regulators are struggling with. So again, my key message is it's important to understand the high-level stuff, but you move things by diving in and actually getting to a basic practical level.
Thank you so much, Ulrike. There is so much doing that. I've been warned of the time again, but I've got 2 more speakers. Andreas, very quickly, just a last comment again on the ethics side. And then I have one more round of one word, but just advice from your side, because you said the training courses exist. Ethics by design. What can, as a user, do here? As a developer or an implementer, what should be the core of the ethics sort of thinking at the part?
Thanks. So I think it's very important for the industry, as we have heard, to incorporate ethics teaching into their education for their workers. It's also important for the universities, and we'll have a separate panel tomorrow on that, on the education that is needed on ethics to integrate that really into the curricula of designers and programmers. But I think it's really a big job for the industry to ensure that their staff are well aware and well trained on the ethical issues.
Thank you so much. Trainings is important. And somewhere last but not the least, the most optimistic word. Where do you see AI from health going from here on as a company? Where do you see the vision of AI for health?
So I think in the most optimistic version of the world where I see like AI for health going is very frankly is a world where we have basically like solved like or cured diseases or found cures for diseases, like all diseases by like 2030, 2035 or something. And that world might seem like like crazy, and like it might be really difficult to even imagine, especially given the number of stakeholders, the amount of coordination that's required in addition to just doing the science to find cures. But that's where I think there are so many force multipliers for all of these coordinations to happen much more smoothly and kind of develop those systems to then like get that impact to the global south, across the world, everywhere. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Soumya. I mean, so there is hope, there's potential, and there is the need for all these ecosystems to be built together. So I think the key words that I've heard from this session, and thank you so much again for all the wise words that have been shared. Of course, with 500 sessions happening, I know hands going up. Please talk to people afterwards. We don't have time, unfortunately, for more rounds of questions here. But that's why we've introduced them very eloquently in the beginning. Please do reach out to our experts. But I do want to summarize the session. I think the key that was discussed is, as an AI implementer here, and we have some very prolific policymakers as well, governance is the key to scale. So even if you're an individual, if you're a sort of part of the policy, look at how can we help build a governance. Mona kept on saying partnerships, and I think in every world of the way we say that, do we actually do that? So I would suggest in the next summit, when we come, at least come and say, I have made 3 partnerships happen on AI and actually implemented those from whoever it is. Data sets be it. I mean, I would love to see collaboration between the governments and the data sets, to the industry coming and showing that case. I think that's our call to make this happen. We all believe in AI, we all believe the potential, but if we can make that happen and shape the investments and resources towards that, I think we would have achieved something and made the mankind a better place. Thank you so much again for being here. Thanks for this panel. And I don't have to say anything, but you can see the interest here. Please do, apologies for not being able to raise our questions. We were told we won't have opportunity for doing that, but please reach out to our panelists and other experts if you need anything. And from WHO, there's an email called ai@who.int. If you need anything or information, please do send an email to that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Anybody who has questions, can they please take it outside of this room? We have a session at 12:30 as well. Please, I would request you to not speak to the speakers here.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice compliment. Thank you. Of course, pleasure.